I think it's 1 minute after 10. I'm going to call this meeting to order. And I'm going to begin by certainly welcome you all to this emergency meeting of the Board of State and Community Corrections. And as we did in our last Zoom meeting, I'm going to ask Adam to go over some ground rules and address our technology pluses and minuses. So Adam, you want to take it from here?
Yes. Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, everyone. I'll give you brief instructions for this meeting. Please be sure to mute your microphones or phones if you are calling in. Board members, if you wish to make a comment on any of the agenda items, please physically raise your hand on your Zoom video so that we could see you, or if you are by phone, please speak up during the comment section. I don't think anyone is on phone right now. Today's voting will be by roll call only. At the end of each agenda item, I will call the roll for the votes. We will give the members of the public the opportunity to comment after each agenda item. Agenda item 5 is the opportunity for any member of the public to make comment on any agenda items or other comments in general. You will have 2 minutes for your comment. Participants who wish to make a public comment, please email Tracie Cone at tracie.cone@bscc.ca.gov. This information is available on our homepage as well. You can also use the Zoom chat feature to make your comments. If you are connecting by phone, please include your name and your phone number so that we can call you by name during the comment section. Madam Chair, that concludes my instructions.
Thank you, Adam. I'm going to actually do what would be considered a lengthy set of comments for the chair's report today. And following that, we're going to go directly into the meeting. I'll remind everybody that we'll do the only agenda item on the board's dais today. And from there, we'll do public comments on that item. Following that, I'll welcome comments by the board and the public. And as Adam told you, that will be not limited to the board, but limited to the audience as to how long they were able to speak. As the board knows, yesterday we announced that through a letter to the sheriffs and the probation chiefs that we were going to begin to collect COVID data in jails and juvenile detention facilities. And this was a decision we reached after many weeks of consultation with our state and local partners. And I want to take a minute to sort of describe the process we went through. And there has been substantial work just to get us to this moment. And I want to, first of all, thank all of our stakeholders for the cooperative nature of the process, and that includes the state partners and those in the local arena. We have had a great deal of interest in the BSCC collecting this COVID data, and we first looked to the State Department of Health and Human Services to assist with that because they are the state's health agency, and they were more than willing to partner with us. But after we processed through what was available to them through their CalReady system, we realized maybe the BSCC's nimbleness and ongoing relationships with all the sheriffs and probation chiefs in the state would make it easier for our agency to collect that data. And I'm making this whole process sound much shorter and easier than it is, but we finally reached a decision and got a prototype of a dashboard that we will begin to house on our website. And we're really pleased to be able to begin this. We also had to process the many, many concerns we have about the privacy of the people housed in our local detention facilities and juvenile detention facilities. And so we have had to consider all that as we rolled out this database. We're hoping that once this rolls out, that it will meet with everybody's approval. We can tell you that we do not want to be duplicative of what the Health and Human Services Agency is doing, and we do not want to burden our local partners with over collecting data in their facilities. So the research team has worked with those things in mind, and I think that intense interest in that data will be met by all parties with a positive outlook. The second thing that was raised at our meeting last month was inspections and our plan to resume inspections. And as you know, with the pandemic out there, it's another complicated issue. We worked very hard to create travel policy and to begin instituting those on-site inspections. We're working very hard to keep the balance of the health and safety of our employees and our concerns about the need for inspections in balance. And I think we've met that balance, and we're beginning to roll that out slowly. Both of these are high interest items, and I know people will want to comment. I know the board will want to comment, but as I said, we're going to hold that until we finalize the one agenda item on our board agenda today. Ralph Diaz and the Secretary of Corrections and the Adult Parole Operations, Guillermo Villarosa, are not here today. They would both need to recuse themselves on this item, so they have been excused. We need to now establish the need for the emergency meeting, and I'm going to look for Aaron McGuire, counsel, to establish that for us as we go forward. Aaron?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Before that, I think we need to call the roll. So,
oh,
Adam.
Boy, that's why you're counsel and I'm not. See, I got so excited about all the good news out there. I missed, some of that process again. So yes, Adam, would you please call the roll?
Chair Penner?
Present.
Mr. Diaz and Mr. Villarosa are absent today. Mr. Groudon?
Here.
Mr. Gore?
Here.
Mr. Field?
Say it again, Adam.
Mr. Seal?
Well, it's not coming clear. Lee Seal, I believe he's asking you.
Oh, here.
Mr. Urtola?
Here.
Mr. Bronco?
Here.
Mr. Mills?
I'm here.
Mr. Budnick?
Here.
Mr. Steinhardt?
Here.
And Ms. Kumpion?
Here.
Madam Chair, we have a quorum.
Okay, and then once again, we're meeting today because we have a need to consider allocating funding to address the emergency housing need of people coming out of state prison. The issue is directly related to the state's response to COVID-19, and the administration has requested a portion of the coronavirus emergency supplemental funding be dedicated to this purpose. And now, Aaron, I think I have dotted all the I's and crossed all the T's, and I turn to you to establish the need for the emergency meeting.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So I think as everyone knows here, normally when we notice our meetings, we are required to post an agenda within 10 days before having that meeting pursuant to the Bagley-Keene Open Meetings Act. However, there are exceptions for that 10-day notice, one of which is for the purpose of addressing an emergency situation. An emergency situation under the Bagley-Keene Act means any of the following is determined by a majority of the members of the state body during a meeting prior to the emergency meeting or at the beginning of the emergency meeting. Those emergency situations are a work stoppage or other activity that severely impairs public health or safety, or both, or a crippling disaster that severely impairs public health or safety, or both. And the board needs to a majority of the members need to make a finding of an emergency before we can take up any action items. And if we do not have a majority of members concurring in that motion, then we have to adjourn the meeting. So
Okay.
at this point, I would look back to you, Madam Chair, to establish an emergency meeting and ask for a motion.
And so doing, I would like to establish this emergency board meeting and look for a motion and a second.
So moved. Sheriff Gore.
I'll second Dean Groudon.
Thank you. Adam, I assume you're going to call the roll for the vote?
Yes. Chair Penner,
Aye.
Mr. Groudon,
Aye.
Mr. Gore,
Aye.
Mr. Seal,
Aye.
Mr. Urtola,
Aye.
Mr. Bronco,
Aye.
Mr. Mills,
Aye.
Mr. Budnick,
Aye.
Mr. Steinhardt,
Aye.
Ms. Kumbion.
Aye.
Madam Chair, the motion carries.
Thank you. And I now ask if any members of the public would like to comment on the finding of an emergency only.
We do not have anyone who has submitted a request, Madam Chair.
Okay, so motion carries. We have no public comment, and we will now move on to item B and ask Deputy Director Ricardo Goodrich to present the item.
Thank you. Good morning, Madam Chair and board members. Ricardo Goodrich with the Corrections Planning and Grants Programs Division to present today's emergency item. Joining me is Stephanie Welch from CDCR to help address any questions you may have. This agenda item requests board approval to allocate $15 million in federal coronavirus emergency supplemental funding to the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation to provide emergency temporary housing to individuals released from state prison due to the coronavirus. The Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act, also known as the CARES Act, made approximately $850 million in federal money available under the Coronavirus Emergency Supplemental Funding Program, or CESF. Of that $850 million, approximately $93.6 million is coming to California. $58.5 million is available to the state of California, and $35.1 million, is available to local governments through a separate application process that does not include the BSCC. CESF provides funding to states, local units of government, and tribes to prevent, prepare for, and respond to the coronavirus. This funding can be used for a variety of purposes, but it must be connected to COVID-19. In the weeks following our June board meeting, the administration identified an urgent need to provide housing to individuals being released from CDCR due to COVID-19. As many as 8,000 individuals with less than a year left on their sentences could be eligible for release by the end of August. Without assistance, many of these individuals may be returning to unstable housing situations, and many are at risk for homelessness. A $15 million CESF award would allow CDCR to leverage its existing reentry contracts to provide additional emergency temporary housing. This would be achieved through the Specialized Treatment for Optimized Programming, or STOP. STOP is a regional provider network that meets the many reentry needs of formerly incarcerated persons transitioning into the community. This specific allocation would fund temporary housing for up to 180 days to individuals leaving state prison due to COVID-19 releases. This allocation would not be used to supplant existing CDCR funding. During the Q&A following my presentation, Stephanie Welch can provide additional details about STOP. In closing, I would like to remind the board that the state level CESF allocation was $58.5 million in total. So there will still be over $40 million available for which the board will determine additional priorities and an allocation plan. We have just completed the public comment period that the board launched in June and received many requests and suggestions about priorities for the funding. Staff will bring a recommendation to the board in September after we have completed additional analysis of the public comment. In addition, with respect to the $15 million that is recommended to address emergency housing needs, we anticipate that CDCR will be able to provide regular reporting on this funding. This concludes staff's presentation, and I'm happy to take any questions that you may have.
I think Stephanie is in the wings and ready to respond to any questions. Does she want to make any opening statement?
Yes, good morning, board members and Madam Chair. My name is Stephanie Welch. I'm the Executive Officer for the Council on Criminal Justice and Behavioral Health, but I also represent the department on the Homeless Coordinating and Financing Council, and I advise the department on issues related to homelessness policy. I think our greatest concern, as I'm sure it is many of your stakeholders as well as your members, is that individuals who are expeditedly released will not have a safe place to land when they go home. And I just wanted to clarify that these are resources that we would be acquiring to serve anybody who is being released from prison, including the vast majority of individuals who will be returning to probation. This is not typically a population that our contractors serve, and it's one of the reasons why we would be requesting some of these emergency funds to expand the capacity of our networks to provide a new modality of service, which is emergency housing. So I'm happy to take any questions, talk more about our contractors or their network of nonprofits, etc.
Thank you, Stephanie, and I'm sure there'll be questions. Now turning to the board for any comments or reactions on the agenda item.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Gotcha.
Stephanie, just could you provide a little more detail about the STOP network and the process for deciding how the funds are going to be spent? And I'm particularly curious about the geography of releases and spending. Just looking for a little more, and I have been asked questions by others, a little more detail on the allocation process.
Yes, so we have 6 contractors, and the STOP network really functions as a hub. Obviously, in order to have statewide capacity, it is very efficient for us to work with a large contractor like an Amity or a Health Right 360 that then has a network of nonprofit providers that can provide services throughout the state. Those services range from everything from residential treatment for substance use disorder to linking people to local benefits and local services. I think these hubs typically focus on serving people the first year that they're home and focus on really connecting them to local services and local resources. I think for us, when we were strategizing about what would be the most literally expedient way to acquire more housing, we thought that working directly with our 6 STOP contractors, we could bring on beds in a very efficient and expedient way. We have had the opportunity to talk to them in anticipation that this would be a successful request. That was about just shy of a week ago, and we've estimated that we could probably bring on another 2,000 emergency beds by the end of August. We have also estimated, you asked about who's going home to where. We have estimated that of the releases, we think about 1,000 people per month may be interested in accepting the offer of emergency housing. As you know, the majority of our releases go to large populated sites, 1/3 to the Los Angeles area. It is true, and this is what we discussed with our contractors, typically it is a little bit easier to bring on beds in more urban, large communities and counties. I think there is potentially the challenge of acquiring some housing in the rural parts of the state. But one of the reasons why we wanted to utilize our STOP network is because they do have those links locally to nonprofits, and it's possible that they're most certainly going to have to expand their capacity beyond those networks to locate the kinds of housing that's needed. To be honest with you, this is an emergency. we've been working on this diligently for the last few weeks because we know that if someone comes home homeless, they have a 7 times more likely risk of recidivating. And this is the solution that we think is going to allow us to bring on the most beds as humanly possible in the shortest period of time, as well as we have a network to keep these particular contractors accountable. We have a reporting system. We have staff that do site visits to ensure that places are clean, the meals are being prepared. But really, these are, for the most part, most people will probably stay somewhere around 30 days. And because they are getting out early and they didn't have an opportunity or time to put together a housing plan, this will really give them a safe landing spot to do some of that. And at this point, we really can't tell. There are some unknowns about how long people will want to stay. It was one of the reasons we came up with the dollar amount. For one, we don't want to request a significant number of resources because we know how much there's additional local need. And so we're requesting less than 1/3 of the overall funds to expand this capacity specifically for emergency housing, knowing that we can link these folks to some local services over time. I'll pause there and see if you have any other additional questions, or if I make sure I answered your question.
That was super helpful. Anybody else?
Oh, that was very helpful.
Yeah.
Gordon?
Anybody?
Yes, I'm not trying to prolong this, but I do have a few questions of Stephanie. You talk
Sure.
about your 6 contractors. Is it appropriate for me to find out who those 6 contractors are? You also are talking about the contractors have contacts with, I guess, community-based nonprofits. I'd like to know what the contractors' criteria is for selecting these nonprofits. To the other board members, one of the letters we just received today from Dorsey Nunn, I don't know if you've read it. It really articulates some of the concerns that I have. But I'm sorry, Ms. Welch, what I'd like to know is who your 6 contractors are, what criteria they use to select nonprofits with whom they deal.
So our 6 contractors, and we're divided up into 6 regions, so I'll just read them off. Program Area 1 is the Central Valley to up towards the Superior region, and that is WestCare. The Greater Bay Area is GEO. The Central California, the larger Fresno, based out of Fresno, is also WestCare. The Inland Empire is GEO, and the Greater Los Angeles area is Amity Foundation, and the San Diego region is HealthRight 360. In terms of the criteria that is used to select their nonprofits, I may have to get back to you on that. I'm not sure that I know specifically what criteria they use. What I can say is that we have an individual who is assigned to go out and review on site each of those nonprofit contractors. And so I believe that if they don't meet our compliance and contract standards, that is the nonprofit provider, that we can address that specifically with the stop contractor.
If I'm understanding you, you have one person who is an employee of the Department of Corrections who is charged with reviewing all of these contractors and the people with whom they contract. Is that what you were saying?
It is most certainly not one employee. We have a whole entire division of rehabilitation programs. And so the capacity we currently have for our STOP network is about close to 2,000 different beds per se, but people who are in a whole continuum of different programs. And so I am not part of that department, but I know that it would be several people. I think what I was specifically saying is that every single element, every single nonprofit within our network through a STOP hub has a program site visit from an individual to ensure that it's a quality contractor, if that helps clarify.
That does help, thank you.
And I did ask the staff back at CDCR, and currently that network of nonprofit collaboratively through all 6 sites is about 500 nonprofits.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions that I can take?
I have a question. I don't know if the board is familiar with MCRP, but I'm sure that you are, Stephanie. Do you know if the people released will be on MCRP, or are they being released without the ankle monitor? Do you know what that, are you familiar with that?
This is where I don't know if anyone else from my department. I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with that.
Okay.
I do know that the vast majority of people being released will be on PRCS, so they'll be on probation. They're not, 2 things. One, obviously people have already been released. They're being released as we're speaking. And so we're really looking at, and that's one of the reasons why we expeditiously have to do this. I mean, we've been looking at a process flow chart in anticipation of this vote for the last week. And we know that while we can refer people and encourage them to go into emergency housing upon release through our parole division, we also really need to work with our probation department and give them all the information that they need so that they can also refer people into this network if it's necessary. And so those are internal discussions that are ongoing. And I'm not sure if that answers your question about the ankle monitor, but I do know the vast majority of these individuals are on probation.
Okay. Another question. I am the community member on the board, so my questions might be a little bit different. But what is the grievance process for the individuals in the STOP programming? Is there a grievance process for, say, someone that's in STOP funding and they have an issue? I know inside CDCR, there's a grievance process called the 602.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the same as the STOP funding?
I apologize. I do not know the answer to that question. I certainly can get the answer to the question and send it to you so that you have it. I would assume that there is a process, but I certainly can message. Hold on. Okay. There certainly is a process, and I can get that back to you. I was hoping that maybe someone was telling me on the phone.
I hope for that often too. I know.
Real time. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Lee?
Thank you, Linda. And thank you, Stephanie, for the presentation. I am not myself familiar with the STOP program. I will be voting in support of it based on what I've heard today in the staff report. For our county, I will say that we're working closely with the administration to make this process of releases as seamless as we can. It's of course not without its challenges. We know that, the administration knows that. But to emphasize some of the points that have been made earlier, the vast majority of the releasees are coming to probation departments in California. They're in the community. They are fully out of custody, so they're no longer have any inmate status. So to Norma's point, again, I can't speak with any expertise on the STOP program, but any kind of grievance would probably be a local matter handled with the probation department, and we're here to try to facilitate any kind of resolution we can. We really see it as our responsibility to try to come in and help to the extent possible. I imagine, or I guess I could pose this as a question, but I would guess that the participation in these beds would be voluntary. It's really intended as a service. I can tell you that in Sacramento County, homelessness is probably the biggest challenge we have for this community of people who are released from prison. Housing is, nearly half the people who come out pose some kind of, have some kind of housing insecurity, and it's really a challenge for us. We want to try to support them as best we can. So this comes at a very important time to help fill that gap. It's important for us. So we support it both locally, and I'll also add that the Chief Probation Officers of California have submitted a letter that I think is publicly posted and available, also in support on behalf of all 58 chiefs statewide. So I really do also speak for all of them as well when I say that this is an important service filling a really critical gap and need that we have right now in the population.
Thank you, Lee. And Norma, to your point on the electronic monitoring, I don't know that there's a blanket order that everybody goes on. EM has an ankle monitor. I think just based on my history in probation, and maybe Lee can speak to this also, it's probably going to be done on a case-by-case basis. I also think the point he makes to the voluntary nature of this housing opportunity, and I really look at it as an opportunity, is something that is important to note. They will not be forced into this process at all. I am really invigorated to see that this money is going to expedite a purpose where none of us want to see individuals released, and there will be a number released ending up homeless. And I think the governor has made the statement himself that he is committed to not contributing additionally to the homeless people in California. And this is one of the remedies that he is hopeful that will assist in that. So this is government trying to be very nimble. These existing stop contractors will be willing and ready to take this population, and we hope that they have capacity to manage them. And all in all, it's a positive step we're taking today, and I really support it. Anybody else on the board have anything they'd like to say? Seeing none, I then would turn to the public for comment. And remember, these comments should only address the agenda item before the board right now. If you have comments you want to share on the items I announced at the beginning of the meeting, please hold those. You'll be given an opportunity to do just that. But right now, I look to Tracie to see who is in the waiting room on this agenda item only. And if you begin to drift, I'm going to ask you to stop and hold your comments till later, if you don't mind.
Madam Chair, we have about a dozen people who would like to speak on this, and we will start with Luis Nolasco of the ACLU of Southern California.
Okay, Luis, before you begin, and thank you for being ready to comment today, you'll be given 2 minutes. We have a whole process here. Adam is going to text me when the 2 minutes is over, and so then I don't want to have to be rude and stop you in mid comment. So please hold yourself to the 2 minutes, and you may begin when you're ready.
Perfect. Thank you so much. My comment is generally just geared toward some of the quote unquote nonprofits that the BSCC is thinking of giving this money to. One of them being the GEO group. First of all, I think we need to make it clear that the GEO group is not a nonprofit. They're a multi-billion private prison company. And if we're really concerned at the fact that they're going to be in charge of community and supervising people, given that they're committing atrocities for people that are detained inside ICE detention custody. So we really urge you to reconsider looking at other organizations. Being based out of the Inland Empire, there are multiple other people here in the region that can provide these services. And so it seems like not enough homework was done about checking in locally with folks that are here doing these this important reentry work. And so I just really encourage you to not give that money to GEO in the Bay Area or the Inland Empire, and to really look at real community-based organizations. Thank you.
Thank you. Tracie?
Avalon Edwards, starting over.
Hi, can you all hear me?
Yeah.
I'd like to echo much of what Luis just said. I originally came to speak strongly in favor of allocating the CESF funding to emergency housing and reentry organizations, but I was not under the understanding that GEO would be the organization in charge of redistributing that money. I'm a policy fellow with Starting Over, Inc., which provides reentry services and transitional housing support for those returning home from incarceration and experiencing homelessness in the greater Inland Empire region. Our organization is run by formerly incarcerated people for formerly incarcerated people. GEO is a group with vested interest in the continued and sustained incarceration of people in our community. This is not a group that's interested in actually providing the reentry services that our community needs. So I'd like to echo Luis's concern and ask that you reassess which organizations will be receiving this funding.
Thank you.
Dorsey Nunn, Legal Services for Prisoners with Children, Executive Director.
Hey, I would like to say that I support what Luis said, but more importantly, you know, a number of us grassroots organizations, we pumped a lot of resources in on various efforts when people were released. And I think being that some of us are actually adversaries to the California Department of Correction, as well as GEO, we will not be considered. And I know that we have actually dropped close to $100,000 when they were releasing people. And I done pumped money into San Diego. I done actually housed 50 formerly incarcerated people for 2 weeks in a motel in Oakland. And I'm concerned that the way that y'all distribute resources and who you are selecting actually leaves some people on the ground without resources, and we're spending our nonprofit money housing people and picking up the mess that I think that actually occurred as a result of the pandemic, the COVID-19, as well as the unpreparedness that the California Department of Corrections had for a real crisis. So I'm just suggesting that you come up with a different way of distributing money, and you actually find real grassroots organizations that can actually step up to the plate, because some of us are holding these hands and actually taking care of people independent of any dimes that we getting out of this pot, because some of us don't feed there. But I'm saying that I don't necessarily support GEO, and some of the people that y'all call nonprofits are not are profit-making machines, and they're not necessarily representing the community very well. So I thought I would get on and say that, you know, and I think the last time I came to one of these meetings, the language that you was using was so outrageous that I can't last long in the room with you, because I think that you're offensive. Thank you.
Jordanna Wong-Omshe from Starting Over, and Sean, she's the one who sent her phone number in so you could recognize it.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, gotcha.
Okay. Good morning. My name is Jordanna Wong-Omshe, and I work for Starting Over, Inc. as well. And I just want to, I'm sorry, just listening to what you guys announced, you know, we do not support the emergency funds going to GEO, and it is incomprehensible that GEO is considered a nonprofit that can effectively impact our community to provide reentry services. Starting Over, that is what we do in Riverside County. And as you've already heard, we are a nonprofit that is founded by formerly incarcerated people and sustained by formerly incarcerated people and system impacted people. We know what our people need when they come home. There is no way that GEO, that is making money off of incarcerating our bodies, knows what they need to provide for our community. I'm asking you all to rethink this, to go back and do more studying or have more in-depth conversations about what it is that reentry really means and what the services our communities mean, and to also think about how tone deaf this decision is at a time like this when we have our communities are advocating for the ending of systemic racism, and you're directly contributing to that by giving this money over to GEO. At Starting Over, Inc., I can tell you that just like what Dorsey said, we will not be considered for this funding. This pandemic has hit everyone economically. We have yet to see the full fallout. And I just ask you all to reconsider this decision. Thank you.
Danielle Sanchez from CPOC.
Good morning, Chair Penner and members. Danielle Sanchez on behalf of the Chief Probation Officers of California, and here today to speak in support of what we know is a very important need for housing as a critical component in the reentry process, and certainly becomes ever more important now in the current kind of pandemic climate, to make sure that we're supporting those who are coming back to our communities on PRCS and parole, both in their reentry and really also as a component to promoting public health orders, mitigating homelessness, and community safety. Probation's been working very closely with the Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, the California Department of Health and Human Services, local county partners, providers of residential services and housing services to identify and secure available space for individuals returning to our communities on PRCS. We see the ability to build capacity as vital and really important to appropriately quarantine and meet health guidelines and directives, while concurrently providing what we know are very key transitional supports to those returning to our communities. So we see this as very timely and essential in light of the pandemic and everything that has been discussed today. So we support this funding for housing to make sure that we can continue to provide these key supports to those returning on PRCS to our communities. Thank you.
Thank you.
Miguel Garcia, ARC.
Good morning, Madam Chair and distinguished board members. My name is Miguel Garcia. I'm the policy coordinator with the Anti-Recidivism Coalition. It is especially critical that the BSCC leverages resources to support communities most in need of support to recover from this public health crisis. Now is the time to embrace an inclusive view of shared safety. More than ever, we need to prioritize stabilizing community-driven public safety solutions and health that center around culturally competent prevention and healing. It is important to consider, however, that the California to which many of these individuals have returned to is drastically different from the California just 6 months prior. Many community-based organizations operating to support this community have dramatically reduced their services, if not shuttered completely. Drug rehabilitation programs and other forms of supportive housing are no longer taking in new clients in order to protect their existing clients from COVID-19 infections. The families to which many of these individuals are likely to have returned have been devastated by unemployment and being cut off from critical community support. ARC members recently returned home from prison have relayed stories of us eagerly planning to settle in with family, aggressively looking for jobs, enrolling in school, or even just getting a driver's license, only to find that these critical first steps in reentry process have become nearly impossible to accomplish during this time. Also, how much of this funding will be directed to youth impacted by COVID-19 and the emergency housing that this population needs? With that said, it is critical to understand that the organizations and nonprofits that were mentioned earlier don't have that culturally competent community-based relationship with the community. I urge that the BSCC reconsider those organizations and actually look at organizations such as ARC, Starting Over, All of Us or None, and others that directly help youth and adults. Thank you.
Sorry about that. I'm just getting a lot of requests coming in. Courtney Rein.
Hello, thank you. And I just want to join the chorus against the GEO situation. Why would we be funding a company that's under federal investigation? And I just wanted to name 3 incredible organizations, adding on to this amazing list that people have already offered up. The Homecoming Project out of Oakland, I would think we might be creative and think about opening up the Veterans Transition Center in Monterey, which has proven track record of much better capacity to help people return to society and to give them the kind of support they need, and also to Home Free, which is located in Treasure Island. So I cannot emphasize my support of the wisdom and the reflections that people have offered up so far about how we actually partner with community-based organizations that are run by people who have the experience and the knowledge of what it takes to bring people home safely in ways that honor their needs and honor the needs of the public. Thank you.
Thank you.
Before I announce the next one, I just want to tell everybody who is emailing me, I have you on the list and I see the ones in the group chat as well. I'm not able to respond to you affirmatively because they're coming in too fast. So I'm trying to manage this. Tyler Rind.
Tracie, before, if you wouldn't mind holding just a minute, Tyler, how many are in the queue, if you don't mind? And
how many more? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Got 13 more in the queue.
Okay, and then what I'd like to do is to set a cutoff time for people getting in the queue. So I think we'll have Tyler speak. Please, if you are out there and would like to make public comments within the next 5 minutes, you may get your name in. After that, we're going to hold on public comments, at least on this agenda item only. Is that suitable to the body? Okay. All right. Tyler?
Yeah, good. Can you hear me?
That didn't count on your 2 minutes, Tyler. I want you to know this is all yours now.
Okay, great. Thank you. And good morning, Madam Chair and members. Tyler Rinde with the County Behavioral Health Directors Association. And I'd like to speak in favor of the $15 million request for the allocation of funding to CDCR to expand their STOP network and provide emergency housing. As mentioned during the meeting today, a significant number of individuals released from CDCR have housing insecurity. And I'd also like to bring to attention to the fact that, a significant number of individuals released also have considerable mental health needs and substance use disorder needs. And so during the allocation of this funding and expanding of the STOP networks, we'd also like to request that CDCR and probation departments coordinate with the county behavioral health systems to ensure that there's a warm handoff of individuals that have behavioral health needs so that their needs can be met in the community. While we are in a global health pandemic, we are also, prior to COVID-19, also having significant substance use disorder and mental health needs in the community, and also for individuals that were being released. So we would request that there be consideration of that during this time as well, and speak in support of the $15 million request. Thank you.
Thank you.
Johnny Lujan.
There you go. How you doing? Thank you for letting me be on. My name is Johnny Lujan, CEO at Freedom Through Education. We are a community-based provider, best-in-class housing program in Sacramento, California. And I had a couple questions about if there's a percentage between who's getting out of prison as far as probation and who's going to be on, parole versus probation. I also had a request in our program to house individuals as an emergency funding to get them out with no programming. For me, as a community-based provider on parolees coming out, it's unprecedented. I can't understand why anybody would release individuals and not give them programming. The other thing is, in this population that is getting released, how many are 290s and are going to need special housing and programming as far as the 290 population is concerned? The other thing is some of the other individuals are saying, us as a community-based provider, hands-on, grassroots organization, we would like to see additional funding to let us add additional housing so we can actually house more individuals. And in Sacramento, California, that seems to be a struggle for us. We have the individuals, we have the capacity to manage other properties that could house multiple individuals coming out of prison and jail. We're just kind of, our hands are tied trying to find other properties in Sacramento And we would really could use some help there. Thank you.
Stephen Green.
Yes, good morning. My name is Stephen Green, and I'm a member of the Anti-Recidivism Coalition, the Transformative In-Prison Work Group, and Project Rebound. And I'd like to say thank you for allowing me to speak today. I'm addressing Agenda Item B. I strongly oppose giving any money to CDCR without any oversight. Agenda Item B would be giving a blank check to CDCR to spend how they want and not necessarily on emergency housing due to COVID. Without oversight, CDCR will surely be asking for more money because the COVID crisis is not going anywhere. I would prefer CDCR look within its own budget and reallocate funding used to house currently incarcerated to reentry of returning citizens. I'd like to strongly urge the board to be fiscally responsible when determining this. Thank you.
Daisy Chavez.
Good morning. Thank you so much for allowing me to speak today. My name is Daisy Chavez, and I'm a policy associate with Initiate Justice. We are in strong support of funding being made available to assist those who are being released during this time of crisis. However, we are against this funding being given to GEO to manage. We really encourage you all to consider giving this funding to grassroots organizations who are actually giving direct services to these individuals, especially those who are system impacted and know what that experience is like. As was indicated during the presentation, people who do not have housing upon release are more likely to recidivate, and this is due to the fact that folks are not having their immediate needs met in order to get started off on the right foot when they are released. There are many barriers to access housing for those who have felony convictions, which often leaves many of these vulnerable individuals without a home and no place to go upon release. Allocating funding to nonprofit organizations for this purpose will alleviate this stressor that many incarcerated people will be facing, especially in the wake of COVID-19, where some may not be able to return to their prospective homes out of concerns for other members of the residents who may be vulnerable to COVID-19. We strongly urge the board to reconsider giving the funds to nonprofit organizations who are ran by impacted individuals, many of whom have already commented on this item already today, as opposed to the agencies that profit off of vulnerable communities. Thank you so much.
Sam Lewis of ARC.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for this opportunity to speak. ARC is in support of the $15 million request to support nonprofits in the state of California. However, ARC is adamantly opposed to funding going to GEO Group, formerly known as Wackenhut. GEO Group is a Florida-based for-profit private prison company that is publicly traded on a New York Stock Exchange. There should be no place in our society for prison profiteers that literally operate on the backs of Black and brown people. So we're adamantly opposed for our taxpayer money to go to a for-profit prison company that's publicly traded. There's no place for that in our state. Thank you.
Kristin Cesario.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Kristin. I am with Fathers and Families of San Joaquin. I just wanted to echo a lot of what has already been said. You know, Stockton is a place known for displacement. We're known for many other high-risk factors, such as substance use, homelessness, generational cycles of unresolved trauma, everything that leads to poor health outcomes. And this solution is going to just continue to contribute to that. We strongly discourage the approval of allocations to go to GEO or WestCare. Those agencies have been profiting off of our people's pain and suffering for way too long. They don't offer solutions. And we really encourage the reinvestment in community-based organizations who have strong relationships in the community, providing direct services through been there, done that models, culturally rooted practices, you know, and promoting wellness. Our stop-funded programs in the area in Stockton don't have the capacity or skills or knowledge to really make an impact on providing solutions towards homelessness or preventing recidivism. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ed Little.
Good morning, Chair and members. I'm speaking as a concerned citizen. I am strongly opposed to any portion of this $15 million going to a private prison operator known as Geo Group, who operates in areas such as South Africa and Australia. This is an atrocity to take these resources that are critically needed by this community, by this state, and give those resources to a private prison operator. We have organizations that have had to close their doors as a result of COVID-19. We have had organizations that have been forced to use their own personal money to help individuals get acclimated and find housing once they're released. Our organization that doesn't even provide housing services had to use money to put people in hotels, and to take this money and to give it to an organization like Geo Group is quite frankly insulting. And it wouldn't have taken much but a cursory Google search for Geo Group to find out what they do and their reputation over many, many years. We have to reevaluate this decision to give this particular company any money that comes to the state of California. There are far too many lives at stake. There are far too many organizations who do good work who are not being considered for this money. We cannot give a penny of this money to Geo Group. Thank you.
Jeff Powell.
Hi, thank you for allowing me to speak. Jeff Powell, NAMI Sacramento. Behavior health is very important for previously incarcerated individuals, as well as case management, substance abuse, mental health. I wanted to talk a little bit about the plans with that and the nonprofits and grassroots that are available. I also want to talk a little bit about Volunteers of America, the AB 109 reentry program that I was a peer support specialist for 9 years with. Chief Sill is very familiar with that program. They were able to actually navigate services, classes, mental health, everything that had to do with anybody being released, probation, mental health court, reentry court. I believe that their model with peer support and the model that they did with aftercare, classes, support, everything was involved as a good model and should be considered also as a vital nonprofit to be in the mix for to be allowed to either bid or be a part of looking at what this is going to look like in the future. Is this is what they have done, this is what they do, and they should be brought at the table for this, including NAMI Sacramento as well when it comes to the peer support, shared lived experiences on the mental health grassroots. And I also want to stand by what ARC is saying. I believe that a private prison or institution for profit should not be allocated these funds. Thank you.
Thank you.
Renee Menart.
Hello, and thank you for taking the time to speak with the community today. I'm Renee Menart with the Center on Juvenile and Criminal Justice. I understand the critical needs for reentry housing and services to support people coming home in the coming month and hopefully far more in the future. I support funding going expeditiously to emergency reentry services while recognizing that this should not come at a cost of ethical considerations. Given the resounding concerns about GEO contracts from our communities today, I'd like to just echo the comments of community members and advocates that have been presented. Some of those who spoke today, including ARC, Starting Over, and LSPC, represent the many CBOs that are committed to serving people coming home, keeping them safe, and keeping them out of the justice system. I understand that what the BSCC is considering today is whether to provide funding to CDCR for emergency reentry housing and services. If the BSCC is to allocate $15 million to CDCR to meet these critical needs, I ask that the proposal be modified to include oversight mechanisms and require that the use of these funds go specifically to support reentry services managed by nonprofits with a prioritization of community-based organizations. Thank you.
Thank you. Tracie, to you, I probably didn't make this clear. We needed to make sure we had cut off the speaker line if you haven't done it already, please do that now. And can you advise me how many we have in the queue?
14.
Okay.
Okay. And next up is Noemi Elias.
Good morning. My name is Naomi and I'm with Fathers and Families of San Joaquin. I wanted to point out that the dividends for the GO group will be distributed on July 24th. And this is alarming given that this announcement was made today. It seems as if there is still a continued invested interest in profiting off of Black and brown bodies. Enough is enough. Systemic racism has no room in our lives anymore. I urge you all to prioritize healing and growth over incarceration and destabilization. We strongly urge that the board funnel money to nonprofit grassroots organizations. It is absolutely disrespectful to our community to invest in a for-profit prison that profits off of the pain of our people. Stockton is at the epicenter of the prison industrial complex, and we strongly urge you to fund local organizations who are run by formerly incarcerated folks for formerly incarcerated individuals. Thank you.
Thank you.
Leah Higgins.
Hi, 1 second. So I am a California resident and I'm paying attention to how money is being distributed in response to the COVID crisis. In a time with such a strain on vulnerable communities and the money available to support them, if you're going to throw money at the problems facing us, at least do it right. Don't waste it sending it to GEO Group. This is obviously just profiting off of the problem instead of solving it. And we see how the government and corporations like GEO Group are working in tandem to, call it problem solving when it's really just furthering the problems facing communities. And I would like to echo everyone encouraging you to do the right thing here and say that we are watching.
Thank you.
Sammy Nunez.
Good morning, BSCC board. My name is Samuel Nunez. I'm the Executive Director of Fathers and Families of San Joaquin. We're a human rights organization that promotes racial justice and transformative community healing in Stockton. And I just wanted to, first of all, say that it's the right direction to actually declare this a housing emergency and redirect some of these dollars towards supporting not just their housing, but holistic wellness of our folks. We have actually been a provider of not only reentry services, but housing support for formerly incarcerated folks. I'm the only executive director in this area, this region, that is formerly incarcerated. This is very important. Our BTDT model, been there, done that, and system navigation has proven to be very effective in not just providing housing support, but a whole host of different kinds of services that include healing services through our Trauma Recovery Center, workforce development through our Caltrans program, and of course, family reunification for families that have been impacted by incarceration persistently and has resulted in family separation. I think it's really important that we kind of take the opportunity to really ensure that this investment is going to water the ground and those people that are most impacted, that are suffering from all of these different kinds of inequities that have historically persistently plagued people of color in places like Stockton, that has an over-reliance on systems to deal with, obviously the unresolved trauma of our folks. We have the DJJ in our backyard that's going to be closing up pretty soon. We have a variety of different prisons along the 99 corridor, and we have obviously an over-reliance on the system, so we're going to have a lot of disproportionate folks coming out to our community. I would strongly argue that the best investment can be made in those folks that have pivoted during this pandemic and have proven to be very effective at bridging services for folks that have been historically disconnected and keeping them connected. And I would echo all of the sentiments of my fellow colleagues and comrades throughout the state to urge you to really reconsider this investment and ensure that it goes to continuing the services that we have all been provided prior to even receiving announcement of these funds. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Dabney Park.
Good morning. My name is Dabney Park, and I'm a youth activist. And
I just want to second everything everyone has said about not supporting GEO and reinvesting in community-based and grassroots organizations. And I also just want to say that or advocate for reporting data on COVID-19 cases in jails and juvenile facilities, and to begin facility inspections immediately. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tess Kogan or Coggin?
Hi there. Sorry, I would just like to second all that Dabney said. I'm working with the same youth organizing team as Dabney, and I second everything that she said.
Thank you.
Stacy Williams?
Hey everyone, Stacy Williams with Fathers and Families San Joaquin in Stockton, California. And here again to support that, I think the $15 million for emergency funding is huge. Like some of my executive director and colleagues have stated, the need is great. However, we do not support $15 million being poured into WestCare and GEO. This is proving to be a money grab for large corporations, and we implore you to redirect the money, like everybody else has said, to CBOs that are grassroots, ran by previously incarcerated people. I think if you look at the money, we're roughly saying that $15 million is going to get us 2,000 beds for 30 days, and that roughly comes to about $7,500 per person. And while I know these are rough estimates, what are we really getting to give to pour millions of dollars into more companies that are privatized, that are usually just doing our people wrong and profiting off of them. The racism that these companies have proven over time proves that you guys have not really done your homework to really see who you're giving this money to. So we ask that there's oversight and that you think long and hard about who you're giving $15 million to. Thank you.
Thank you.
James Martinez.
Good morning, board. My name is James Martinez. I'm a policy and programs assistant with MILPA. We strongly support funding for reentry services and housing. However, we do not support this $15 million attempt by CDCR to grab and allocate with an alleged nonprofit that's operating under a false pretense. That's very concerning to see CDCR's operation with GEO. You know, if you ask me personally, it's a clear conflict of interest, and it violates the checks and balances that we've implemented in this country with the Constitution. So I think that's something that really needs to be looked into, is how's that $15 million going to be allocated? And if it's going to be allocated, it needs to go to CBOs who are providing evidence-based solutions and are being productive in communities where they're on the ground in support of the community. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Kathy Prismich.
Good morning, Madam Chair and board members. My name is Kathy Prismich-Kernan. I'm with GEO Reentry Services, and I've been involved in reentry in the state of California and counties statewide for almost 2 decades, working to assist the justice-involved population successfully reintegrate into their communities. Comments by some today specifically against GEO reentry are uneducated on what we actually do and what we don't do in the area of reentry statewide. As a provider of STOP services in 2 regions, I just want to remind everyone that this is an allocation of money to go to nonprofits. It's a pass-through of dollars to the nonprofit network in the communities. We've been providing this management of services for several years for CDCR. We have hundreds of nonprofits in our network of providers currently, and we're in the process of growing this network to meet the state's current needs. I'm happy to educate people on what we do and what we don't do outside of this call. This should not be about tax status, nonprofit or for-profit. This is about servicing the population on what they need to be successful, not about politics. Again, I'm happy to meet and discuss any of the facts with anyone at any time. Thank you very much.
Malia Philippou.
Hi, I'm another youth activist here to reiterate a lot of what people have said, talking about the money allocated for nonprofits going to a for-profit corporation, GEO. Like many people have said, it's very sad to see money that is supposed to go towards rehabilitation and reentry go into the pockets of corporations that are only there to make money off of Black and brown bodies. Thank you.
Thank you.
Stephen Green.
I think Stephen Green already spoke.
I already spoke, but thank you.
Yeah, I remembered you,
Wanted to
Stephen.
make sure. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Robert Forte.
Yes, good morning and thank you. Well, and I appreciate the board's consideration for all this being addressed. I just want to say that it is really, really not solvent to support GEO's direction of these funds. The most important thing is to address the grassroots organizations that are on the forefront. I myself work for Metro Community Ministries. We are on the front line of dealing with the reentry population. And as I review CDCR's numbers, in the last 7 months, you've already released 10,000 inmates. And then in addition to that, out of that 10,000, 50% of them are homeless. So the way the system is functioning already is a failure. The allocation should go to CDCR, but it should go directly down the chain of command to probation and parole. Those are the organizations that recognize the ones that are on the forefront. I myself are holding inmates' hands on a daily basis to get them housed and get them educated and get them employed. GEO's not doing that. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
The last commenter I have in the queue that is Gracie Vega.
Hi, thank you. I am also calling to reiterate my disgust with GEO and to urge you guys not to put your funds there, but rather to other transition homes or reentry organizations such as Home Free and Project Homecoming. Thank you. I'm also a youth advocate.
Thank you. I believe I heard you say, Tracie, that was the last person in the queue.
I think that's it. Did Cesar Laura speak?
No, I didn't.
Okay, I think I skipped that one, and he got in under the deadline.
Okay, Cesar.
Good morning, everybody. Cesar Lara, I'm the Policy and Programs Director at Milpa, a nonprofit in Salinas, California, and I kind of want to echo some of the comments that some of my colleagues said around GEO, but want to A, support this funding, but B, make sure that beyond just a warm handoff, that we have wraparound services for those that are being released, in particular behavioral health services, in particular making sure that everybody that gets released is enrolled into Medi-Cal, and then housing, as we said earlier. There's a number of nonprofits that do excellent work across the state, and relying on an organization like GEO is not the answer. The Veterans Transition Center in Monterey County, I think, would be a great organization to look at as doing some of these services. But I take into task the comment by the GEO staff member that spoke about uneducated. I think that as community members that have been tracking this issue, we see what GEO Solution has done to the communities across California. And we ask that the wisdom of the board is to steer away from them and to ensure that we really have proper impact with this funding, and make sure that the funding that does go out, you have oversight over it. But definitely want to ensure that those issues are prioritized and move away from the what you've done in the past, and to invest in an organization like GEO that really isn't as effective as it can be with many organizations that can do that. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So Tracie, do we get everybody? I don't want to cut anybody out. Everybody that was in before we
Before we cut it off. Yes, you got, I believe this is that's everybody now before the cutoff.
All right. All right. And now I'd like to go back to the board. And I don't know how to get them on my screen. Is there, Sean, am I doing something?
Yeah, in the top right-hand corner, you
There
should
we
see a
go.
little, there you go.
There you go. I think I see all of you. Okay. Certainly wanting to be respectful of the many opinions that we heard.
You asked for board comment?
I'm going to.
Did we jump past that? Well, I mean, I just think that was a damning indictment of the geo role in all of this, which is news to me. I mean, I'm learning as we go, and some very critical points were raised by the community advocates about the methodology for spending this money. I don't know how to respond based on the limited information we've been given, but I just think that some response is necessary. And I mean, I don't know enough to say we should have a rider that says the funding should be prioritized for nonprofits. It just needs more work. On the other hand, this needs to move fast, and I get that too. I'm just wondering if we can't ask CDCR to work with it in the implementation with an advisory group of stakeholders that takes into account a lot of these factors that have been laid out. I don't see what the harm in that would be, because the danger is that we just go pell-mell forward, and some of these, I mean, the word atrocity has been introduced into the discussion. I can't evaluate that, but it does worry me. So I would like to see the allocation process informed by a continuing conversation with the stakeholders that have talked today.
Okay, just 1 minute here. Am I being heard? I don't see myself.
You're being heard.
And okay, then I'd like to then acknowledge you, Sheriff Gore.
Thank you. Just for my own clarification, I mean, obviously this is an emergency meeting and this money has to get out there fast to provide this housing. My understanding was that the six regions around the state, GEO was chosen, I think, in 2 of those because of existing contracts with CDCR. So we don't have to go out to another bid. And also, if I understood Kathy Prismich correctly, GEO, it's just a pass-through GEO to get the money out to community-based organizations. Am I incorrect on that, Stephanie, or whoever wants to weigh in?
No, I'm happy to weigh in. You're not incorrect. I think we were trying to tag on to existing CDCR contracts to expedite this money to the field based on the early releases, the last round of early releases as a result of COVID. Now, I thought I heard Stephanie say at one point, and I'd like for her to help me here, that there were 500 CBOs that are getting this PASS money to provide services out in the field. Certainly, David, I heard what you said, and we certainly heard a lot of issues about GEO in particular, a few about Westcare, and I think the issue that we have at hand is those are the existing contracts that we have the ability to tag on to move the money out into the field. So Stephanie, would you address some of the concerns we heard?
Certainly. One of the reasons why we selected the STOP network is because we can amend those contracts. We can literally bring up bids starting today, actually, after this vote. And so it would take months to go back and directly contract with the nonprofit network that GEO manages in those 2 regions. I certainly hear what people are saying, and I think a suggestion that I would have, we're very committed to being transparent in this process and providing information to the board. So whether that's we come back and report out who are the nonprofits that we're working with, certainly we can do that. We also could provide information about the potential of additional people that we're going to engage because we have to expand our existing network so broadly. That's something that I'm sure that the department can do. And I don't see my face either on the screen, but I'm assuming that you guys can hear me.
Yeah, I just asked Tech if they could get all the board members and speakers on the same screen. It's very difficult to follow the flow of things.
Yeah, so in the top right-hand corner of your screen, you should see a little icon that has a bunch of little squares inside a larger square,
Okay.
and it should say gallery view on it. If you click that, it should show everybody. Unfortunately, it's not something that I can lock for everybody.
So that would be my suggestion, that we provide that list, come back and report out that list of subcontractors. And I will also go back and check with the staff around, what are some of the mechanics of what that pass-through looks like?
I think it'd be helpful to know, are there set administrative fees that GEO can charge to let this money go through their corporation to the nonprofits, the CBOs? Maybe that would be helpful if, so the public could see what their costs are, what they're taking off the top of that proportion of the 15 million they're getting to provide that service, to get the money to the CBOs.
Yep, that'd be helpful. I thought I saw Scott.
Yeah.
Want to speak? There you go, Scott.
So I appreciate all the public comments, and I'm in absolute agreement that these funds should be going to nonprofits to do this work. I'm only familiar with the work that Amity does in the LA area, and they're one of the only providers I've ever seen of these major stop providers that I think really do a great job in making sure the folks that they're contracting with put human dignity and really treat the folks that are living there with honor and do good work. I love what they're doing. I absolutely think we need some standards. This is a much larger conversation, but I've seen, obviously I'm not in agreement with for-profit companies doing this work, but I've seen nonprofits, some of which have been mentioned on here, do a really bad job, not employ system impacted folks, not use system impacted folks in any way to help the folks coming home. And I don't think doing a bad job is just limited to folks that are for-profit companies. I've seen nonprofits do a really bad job. I've seen nonprofits take all the money and not give it to the folks that are living there and provide the services that they're supposed to be providing. So I think we need to figure out overall, and this is a much larger conversation than today, how do we make sure that these places that are offering housing for folks coming home are held to a certain set of standards to treat people with human dignity, to engage folks who are system impacted in their hiring process and in their life coaching and case management, whatever they're calling it. I think, if I'm understanding this correctly, that none of these folks would be going to GEO beds or GEO places, that GEO will be contracted with nonprofit providers. And maybe, obviously, I heard that it would take months to not use GEO, who won this bid and is overseeing those regions as the pass-through. And I don't think we want to wait months for someone that's getting out next month. But I'm wondering what the feasibility of saying that for these folks that are finding the providers, that anyone that's as of a nonprofit status is first in line. I would say that it has to be someone who has a nonprofit status. But my question is, if we have 8,000 people that need beds and we run out of nonprofit beds at 7,000, do we prefer the last 1,000 people coming home from prison that needs housing having no bed and no place to go, or going into someone that doesn't have a nonprofit designation? That's a question I have for the group. I think we want to try to get everybody into housing. But obviously, I think all these folks who spoke today that represent housing programs that I know who are doing a great job. So many of the folks that spoke today, I know their programs. I know folks that have lived in their programs. I've visited the programs. I've hung out at the programs. That they have folks that are not making a profit are first in line for these beds.
Thank you, Scott. I think you really summed up some things that I would characterize by saying we're sort of at the intersection of urgency and accountability. And the issues that were raised by many of the speakers. Many of the speakers we are familiar with and have confidence in are certainly not to be ignored. But as we deal with the pandemic, a crisis, early releases from custody, and not wanting to, add to homelessness and hopelessness as people get out of custody, we have to use the most expedient vehicle to do just that. We talked, not as a board, but as an agency, about accountability of these very funds in the last couple of days, and want to propose that we bring this back before the board at the next meeting for a review and look at some of the outcomes we hope to have by then. I don't think we're going to be able to manage both things today, and that is the need to piggyback on the CDCR contract was done because of the urgency and the early releases, and we're not going to be able to tease out of that contract likes and dislikes, frankly, and but we can bring it back to the board for consideration to see what kind of progress we've made. I don't know that that helps those of you with doubts. David, I look at you particularly. I'd love to hear your response to the suggestion I've made.
Well, I just think we have to do something to address some of the really important issues that have been raised. And I didn't quite get when you said the contract's already in play before we've approved the funding. I kind of don't understand that. So
well, let me address that really quickly. I probably didn't communicate well. What I mean to say is we're using the vehicle of the STOP program to allocate the 15 million, and those contracts are existing. So forgive me.
So given the urgency, and I get that, I mean, I only see two possibilities between now and say an August board meeting. And one is to inform the allocation process with input from stakeholders to CDCR. At least they, get into the conversation with their concerns, whether they can be acknowledged or not. And the other is, and Sheriff Gore kind of mentioned this, can we get a kind of roadmap back soon on the points that were raised as to who are the nonprofits that are actually going to get this funding? I mean, I don't see why that couldn't come back, not to wait for another board meeting, but come back as a matter of public information as to exactly where this money is proposed to be going, and maybe with some of the profit information as well tied to it. So, I mean, just looking for some immediate responses that reflect the concerns that were raised.
Stephanie, we know where the money is going at this juncture. Is that not true?
Well, I think we need to, I think that we would have to talk, we have 6 regions, and there's an analysis going on as to where those people are being released to. I mean, simplicity's sake, we know that Southern California is probably going to have a lot more. We also have an emergency in our Bay Area with our San Quentin prison. So I think, I'm not sure if I'm answering your question, but what I was suggesting we do is that we come back, and I think you guys have a board meeting in August, right? That we come back with a list of who all of our subcontracted nonprofits are, and also explain to you how the STOP process works in terms of the super contractor, the Amnities and the Health Right 360s, et cetera, and how that process works. And as I mentioned before, because we've not done or provide this modality of housing before, we are probably going to be working with additional folks. And I have received personally, as probably you have at BSCC, numerous notes and organizations that have reached out and offered to be of assistance. And we will be obviously sharing all that information with our STOP contractors. So I feel like we would be happy to come back and provide an update on this and some of those issues. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that's helpful. I think the board sounds that is their desire, that there will be a report out at the next meeting, that we would like you to roadmap for us, not just the super contractors, but these subcontractors. And we recognize that people are being released as we speak, and so we need to move the money forward, but we need to be assured that we're using grassroots CBOs to do the work they need to do, and that those CBOs are providing the services we want. So I have a suspicion that you can do that for us in August.
Yes.
David, does that meet some of the concerns and needs? Scott, does that help you?
Well, I mean, we're talking about 8,000 prisoners in a high-risk situation that need to move, and I understand that time is of the essence here, and so I'm prepared to support this on the basis of getting it moving and the reporting back. I mean, that's perhaps the best we can do right now without stopping the train, and we should not stop the relief. That's absolutely unnecessary. And the other thought I have is that this is 15 million of leaving another 40 million out there. And I think as we look at how to spend that, which may also involve spending on releases, I don't know, we haven't decided, but it's clear that we have a lot of factors to take into account about the role of the community, about more than just housing, but mental health services, 290 cases, sex offenders have been mentioned. I mean, there's a lot to this that we need to be aware of and to look at as we look at the rest of the pot.
I have to jump. So if we're going to vote, I'm going to need to vote in the next 15 minutes because I have to go speak at something. But my question is to anyone that's on from Amity or West Care, Health Right 360 or GEO, what percentage of the providers that are going to be contracted to do housing under this, what percentage are nonprofits? Is 100% nonprofits? Is it less than 100%? Does anyone have that answer?
I don't know that we have a vehicle to get you that answer right now, Scott, based on the way we're doing the meeting.
Oh, okay. Sorry for interrupting. This is Tracie, and I'm getting an indication that someone can answer his question if you care to take it.
Hi, this is Kathy Prismich-Kernan with GEO Reentry, and Scott, I can attempt to answer your question. And I say attempt because I don't have the exact percentages, but I would say the majority of them are nonprofits. Probably over 80% are nonprofits. We go through a process when we are working with the subcontractors of these services to ensure that a lot of variables are met. You know, we're looking at price, location, needs, because a lot of these beds are fulfilling different needs of the population. Understanding that this is emergency housing and unfortunately does not come with wraparound services, we are looking at that as well. So some of these, and as far as our network, for the emergency housing, we may have to look at hotels, we may have to look at motels, which, as you know, are not non-for-profits. But for the most part, we are working with nonprofit organizations throughout the state of California. But we also need to make sure that they're managing their organizations properly. So there's a lot to consider when you're looking at this funding. We take it very, very serious.
Thank you. Scott, does that help you?
Yeah, is there anyone on the line from Amity or West Care or Health Right?
Mr. Budnick, real quick, Emmanuel Barr, I work with Kathy Prismich. That statistical number is over 90% non-for-profits in Area 4. I'm looking at 73 agencies that receive funding, most of which are not-for-profit. Just want to add that.
Okay. Anybody, Scott is inquiring of anybody from Amity or who else did you mention?
Anyone from the 3 nonprofit providers that oversee the stop areas on with us right now?
My understanding is nonprofits that they would work only with nonprofits, but I would, that's just from my background working with nonprofits, but I don't think anyone is on the line from any of those entities.
Is there a way during this vote, since obviously this is urgent? I had a kid I taught many years ago come back last week from these early releases due to COVID, homeless with nothing, just released to the streets, and he has nowhere to go. So I understand the urgency of this. And is there a way in our vote to vote on approving this, prioritizing nonprofit organizations? And then obviously there's a much larger conversation that the community needs to have right now, because all of these contracts are rebid every few years, and governors made commitments. And so, but I think right now, is there a way to just to approve this with a prioritization?
Yeah, and I think what we're going to have to do is approve it with the stop network in place. I don't think that we have the ability to reach in and prioritize their contract. So I don't want to give people that false impression that these people, it was set out to me, I think in the beginning of this, geographically. So if we begin to try to slice and dice nonprofits versus profits, then there are areas of the state where the super contractor is a for-profit, and we would unintentionally harm individuals.
I'm not talking about that, because that they've won that bid. I'm talking about the actual places where people coming out of prison are going, not the person that's passing through the money, but the person. Yeah, go on.
I guess in all honesty, one of my concerns would be, and I think it was the point that the woman on the phone made, because this is emergency housing, a modality of housing that our existing network of contractors do not typically provide. We may have to rely on hotels and motel rooms, especially. We got to get, I just wouldn't want that to negatively impact it, because I do think as emergency housing, that is a modality that we may have to rely upon.
I know, but what I'm saying is, I don't think, maybe I'm not being clear. What I'm saying is, if you're looking at Fresno and you're looking at a certain amount of beds that you need for people coming home, that if you need 80 beds and the nonprofits in Fresno can say, altogether, we have 60 beds for you, that you would fill those first 60 beds at the nonprofits and then use a hotel or motel for the other 20.
I understand what you're saying. I do think for expediency, we have contracts in place that for people that we would want to house today, tomorrow, those subcontractors, they're already in place. And that what our big contractors, what the amenities would be doing starting today, if they haven't already started in anticipation of this, is identify those additional subcontractors that they have to bring into their network that they may not currently have a relationship with. And so I think what the Madam Chair was saying is that the more specific we get, the more challenging it is to leverage the expediency of the existing structure. But I do think that the vast majority of people that we work with are nonprofit providers, and we can provide that information to you regularly. And I do believe that the network is going to have to grow in order to meet the need. To clarify, we believe that 1,000 people every single month will need housing, not just by the end of August. So this is a massive ongoing need, and I believe that we will be operating these additional beds for more than 6 months. Again, people may want to stay for 180 days. What I'm saying is that we have an ongoing relationship, and if you want us to come back on a regular basis and report to you who we're working with and how that network has expanded, changed, grown because we've grown capacity to meet the need, then we can report that information to you.
Thank you. That's helpful. I do not want to slow this down. The sense of urgency is not lost on me. I just think this is a much longer conversation that we need to be having. I also want to state one more thing. And when I listened to Sammy Nunez from Fathers and Family in San Joaquin talk, that I do not want, especially in places like the Central Valley that are not rich in services, like some of the larger metropolitan areas like LA. I don't want to stick somebody in a hotel room in Stockton with no connection to Fathers and Families and other organizations in the Central Valley that I've seen doing great work. So I don't want us to forget about the Central Valley or any other places that folks are coming home to that don't have services and don't have help. And so I just want to put that on the record.
Thank you, Scott. Well stated and should be noted. I'd like to bring this to some closure now so we can vote on the motion before the board. And I would only say that, this is doing business different than the BSCC generally does business. I would point your attention to the adult reentry grant that we just rolled out into the field. Much different service level and provider, and we're really proud of the way that we rolled that out. I'm also happy to be able to assist in this crisis. And I think that's what we're doing right now. And if we can accept the massive crisis we're in and the needs these individuals have starting yesterday, we need to move the item. So I am looking, if there's no other comments from the board, I'm looking for a motion and a second.
Ms. Penner, Chair Penner, I just wanted to
Norma,
say,
I know you're going to recuse yourself.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure when I did that, but
now's a really good time because you had to remind the chair again that I saw a note about that.
But
and
just really quickly, just like 1 minute, I just want to appreciate Stephanie for coming up here.
I don't think you get to speak if you're recused.
Oh, sorry.
I think that would be dangerous. So then excuse me for telling you to be quiet now. That was so rude on my part, but I think those remarks better held.
Madam Chair, can I clarify on the recusal real quick? And I'd like to just add an explanation since Mr. Budnick may wish to not vote on this item as well. The Anti-Recidivism Coalition is a contractor with CDCR. They are not a stop contractor, is my understanding of the relationship. So there's no direct financial conflict of interest for either Ms. Kumpion or Mr. Budnick on this item. So Ms. Kumpion is free to discuss her thoughts on the subject as long as the motion doesn't include money going to the Anti-Recidivism Coalition. So I sort of defer to her on whether or not she wants to make those comments, and she can certainly elect not to vote on the item.
Well, thank you, Council. I realize now that I've let Scott speak quite a bit. So Norma, I take back my refusal to allow you to speak. My apologies after my lawyer so advises me I'm not as smart as I thought.
I know, I love having a lawyer here.
Yeah.
But I wanted to thank Stephanie really first for coming here and giving a lot of clarity to this. But I also want to say, you may have noticed me when the words GEO came up, I sort of did a little shock, and all of us who are system impacted or formerly incarcerated, we will all stand back when we hear the words GEO. I deal with one of the GEO services and also with Amity, and it's really striking to me to see such a difference. Amity's doing an amazing job. They are very responsive. They are really working towards helping people re-enter society. And when some of our guys come from the GEO program, you can tell by their lunches how they're being treated there. And there's no way for them to speak out. And not only that, I want to just paint a picture for you, because a lot of people came here today and a lot of people spoke. And I want them to all know that we are hearing them. And you went through this, we hear you. Just picture yourself, you made a mistake. Maybe Maybe you didn't, who knows? Whatever happened, you go to prison, you get some resources, you say, hey, I want to be a different person. Hey, I've learned some 12 steps. Hey, I've learned how to manage, whatever. You get to GEO and all of those support systems are taken from you. But if you go to another reentry program where they do have life coaches there, they do have case management, they have workshops for resumes, then you're able to succeed. And so that's really why you hear so much passion in this room, because we have been there and we know what that feels like. And I want you to take this with you, Stephanie, that we want to figure out how we can continue to have programs that will help our people succeed. Help our people, all of our citizens succeed in this world because they made a mistake, maybe not. But whatever the case may be, let's treat people in that way. And so I would just really want to challenge you, Stephanie, to figure out a way that we can continue this conversation and have ways that we can support our citizens, our people coming home with jobs and services and therapy. So thank you so much today. And now I will recuse myself. Now I'm recusing.
Thank you, Norma.
That's
okay.
My recuse.
You're on. Yes, we noted. Anyone else from the board like to comment? Seeing none, the motion, allocation of the coronavirus emergency supplemental funding of $15 million to the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation to provide reentry services and housing to individuals released from state prison due to COVID-19. I'm looking for a motion and a second.
So moved, Sheriff Gore.
I have a motion and a second. Thank you, Chief Urtola. Adam, would you poll the membership?
Chair Penner?
Aye.
Mr. Grabbe?
Aye.
Mr. Gore?
Aye.
Mr. Seal?
Aye.
Mr. Urtola?
Aye.
Mr. Bronco?
No.
Mr. Mills?
Aye.
Mr. Budnick can be recused, and Mr. Steinhardt.
Aye.
Madam Chair, the motion carries.
Thank you, Adam, and thank you to the board for a lot of hard work and great conversation. We now move.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair. Can we clarify? Did Mr. Budnick elect to recuse? He wasn't required to recuse, so I just wanted to make sure, Scott, if you wanted to lay off the vote or not. Did he leave?
I think he had a speaking engagement he mentioned
Got it.
in his comments earlier. So,
All right, so not voting.
no,
Thank you.
let the record reflect there was no vote. So, thank you. That was the item on our agenda. Now I move to the public comment section of the meeting that I earlier referenced when I gave my opening remarks. This is a time for first the board to comment on, then the two items I raised were A, the COVID-19 data collection by BSCC, and B, the resuming inspections in jails. So those are the two items. If you want to comment on those, if you want to comment on anything else today, I throw that to the board first. Seeing none, I would now open it to public comments. Tracie, do you have people that wish to comment?
Madam Chair, we have two people who would wish to comment.
Before you start, Tracie, please. Two people are commenting. We're going to close the queue if that is all we have, and I invite the first person to comment.
Brian Goldstein with CJCJ.
Brian?
Good morning. Brian Goldstein with the Center on Juvenile and Criminal Justice. It's clear COVID-19 is an emergency in California's jails and juvenile facilities. In April, CJCJ and over 30 organizations submitted a letter to the governor and BSCC requesting COVID-19 testing data. We're thankful Governor Newsom listened to our concerns, and BSCC is now rolling out this dashboard. But this is a first step. It's certainly not the final step to understand this crisis. We would ask BSCC to include 2 additional metrics in this dashboard. The first is the weekly total number of tests administered within a facility. And second, the weekly total number of individuals under quarantine and isolation. This allows us to understand how counties are tracking COVID-19 and the rate of infection. These are baseline reporting metrics similar to what CDCR and others collect. If the counties are providing weekly positive test numbers to BSCC, it should be easy for them to track these additional critical data. Thank you.
Thank you.
Miguel Garcia.
Thank you, Madam Chair and distinguished board members. I just want to go ahead and just go back to the comments that the GO person said, that some of the opposition that was stated earlier were based on uneducated assumptions. Many of those that you heard from today come from system impacted, directly impacted from the criminal justice system. We understand the barriers, the challenges when coming home with reentry. And when you have an organization and an agency saying that a community that is most impacted is uneducated on the work that they're serving and the population they're serving, is really offensive. And as many of us that have shown up today have dedicated our lives to, bettering those that have suffered some of the same injustices or some of the same challenges as us. I think this just kind of paints a picture of the lack of confidence that we have with these for-profit agencies and the way that they'll contract. Again, labeling an agency or an organization as nonprofit does not necessarily mean that they're culturally incompetent based with the community. I know that this conversation will be carried on later on, but I just want y'all to think about that and some of the people that showed up here today, because we're not asking for dollars, we're asking for hope, and we want to make sure that hope continues. Thank you, and I'll have a great day.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, we have one more who came in late. Do you care to take it?
Yes. Why, Tracie, how could I say no to that?
Avalon Edwards.
That empathetic ask.
Thank you. I spoke earlier. I'd just like to speak again about on-site inspections. It was mentioned earlier that they have been paused to protect the safety of BSCC inspection staff. And while I appreciate that priority, the safety of our community members behind bars deserves the same priority. COVID-19 is tearing its way through our county jails, which means there's an unprecedented need for emergency inspections rather than the opposite of waiting and holding off on inspections. In Riverside County specifically, unsupervised jail conditions have already led to several COVID-19 related deaths and the infection of hundreds in custody. And yet Riverside County Sheriff Chad Bianco maintains that he has this outbreak under control. I can only speak about what's occurred in Riverside County, but it's clear to me that emergency jail inspections are necessary now more than ever. I ask that you treat the lives of our community members behind bars with the same seriousness as those of your staff. I can't emphasize enough that this is the time, more now than ever, that we need inspections of jail conditions to ensure that no more lives are lost due to the failure of jails to protect the people in their custody. Thank you.
And I would only sort of defend that statement because I think the piece of it that wasn't indicated in your comments just now was, I believe I talked about the safety of our employees and also the safety of those incarcerated throughout the state. So thank you. And
Thank you.
now I believe we're at the point in the meeting where we can adjourn. And thank you all for your hard work. I'm hoping that as we move through this transition, into providing beds with the $15 million that we see positive outcomes within the next month when we meet at our meeting and look at some of that. I also want to be very optimistic about beginning to do the COVID reporting in jails and juvenile detention facilities. And as we start down that road, I want to thank once again both our state and local partners. We've had enormous cooperation. I had an opportunity to speak to all the chief probation officer in a Zoom meeting, and they were ready, willing, and able to report out on juvenile incarceration data. And I've had sheriff by sheriff comments, and they seem to be willing and ready to report out also. So thanks to all of them, and we'll be in touch and hopefully can report back on all of that to this board within the next month. All right. All right, Katie, anything? You were awfully quiet today.
Yeah, thank you very much, Madam Chair. Very important discussions today. And I believe Adam will correct me if I don't say this right. Our next scheduled board meeting is August the 13th. So we will see you then.
All right. Signing off all. Thank you all very much.